Wow. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thank you for taking the time to tune in once again. Appreciate it. We're going to continue in our ancient Americans, lost giants research. All right, we got a lot of videos now on giants, a lot of books, different people, different investigations, different reports that has been done. What has been found here in ancient America. When they dig up, these ancient mounds in different places in the Americas, they're finding compelling evidence that there was a giant race of men. Whether we're talking 7-footers, 8-footers, 9-footers, 10-footers, 12-footers, 15-footers maybe. So we come back to the book, Ancient America's Lost Giants by Chaviant Hayes. We're going to go to chapter 2 today. And it's chapter 2. And it says here, Giants of the Southeast. Let's see what it has to say, right? When the Spanish conquistadors came to the New World, they were expecting to find gold, not deadly encounters with giants. Unfortunately, most of what the Spanish thought was gold turned out to be tumbaga, a mixed bronze alloy painted to look like the precious metal the conquistadors were so desperately seeking. In fact, the conquistadors wound up finding more hardships than actual gold as they plundered, murdered, and enslaved their way through the Western Hemisphere, all in the name of God, or in the name of their Jesus. Again, enslaved who? American Indians, not Africans. Looking to spread Christianity to the savages, thus the hijack, the encounter was their way of reconciling the fact that they were destroying thousand-year-old cultures. But the conquistadors were the marching armies of Spain, and the heads of Spain were interested in only one thing: gold. So imagine the shock and disbelief of the conquistadors upon their first encounter with giants. It must have been a truly mind-blowing sight to behold, since the average height of the Spanish was around 5 foot 4 inches at the time. All right, listen, at the time, many of these Europeans are very short, guys. They're letting you know right here, at that time, in colonial time, we're talking about 1500s, right? They were 5 foot 4. They were very small, I guess, or shorter, right? Than what you would consider a giant, right? A 7-footer, 8-footer. So it says, keep in mind that these giants were around 6 to 9 feet in height. Like I just said, a 7 to 8-footer, 9-footer, right? 6-footer. I mean, we see 6-feet people today in height, but that's what he's talking about. Compared to them, the Europeans or the Spaniards, Sephardic Jews, a lot of these Moors, all these people, 5'4". So they would encounter people from 6 to 9 feet in height, making battles against them a very daunting task. The Spanish encounters with giants were scarce, as most of the natives were of normal size, but chiefs of certain tribes were indeed giants. Listen, it's not just one. We know we got the drop on Tuscaloosa, the Black Warrior. He was almost 8 or 9 feet tall. Yeah, he was an 8-footer or 9-footer, Tuscaloosa. All right, they might mention that in this chapter today. But there was more than just Tuscaloosa, he's saying, but many chiefs of certain tribes were indeed giants. All right. Remnants of the ancient mound building culture, with these skeletons are 7, 8, 9-footers, right? They made these claims to keep a certain giant bloodline alive, as an archaic set of mystery genes was passed down among tribe members ages ago. Some of these giant Indian chiefs were now the inheritors of that lost race of red-headed giants who once mined copper on the Bronze Age shores of Lake Superior. all right? And I just want to say, were they all red-headed? Did they all really have red hair? I mean, yeah, many were found. I don't think all of them had red hair. And also, red-headed doesn't automatically mean pale skin, all right? So, your concepts, your stereotypes, you know, okay? But yeah, it could have been some pale. Could have been a lot of the giants that were copper colored. So they're saying either way, these are the same people who was mining that ancient copper in Michigan, who remember was connected to the Ohio Hopewell culture, mound builders. Same people, he's saying, with their forefathers already long buried, the great chiefs of the 1500s, knew it wouldn't be long before their race would suffer the same fate, as the arrival of the conquistadors signaled a certain doom. Conquistador and explorer Pamphilo de Narvaez had already conquered Jamaica and Cuba, but failed to capture native settlements in the sticky jungles of northern Florida. He retreated back to port at Tampa Bay with less than half his men, starving and with no gold in sight. His men moaned with empty bellies as they marched back to shore. Those who survived were lucky enough to not perish in the Florida jungles or get picked off by arrows flung from native archers. When a starving Narvaez finally made it to the harbor, he discovered that his ships had all but vanished. With no other option, he and the remaining soldiers made makeshift rafts and attempted to sail back to Cuba. Yeah, right. But ran headfirst into a menacing storm and were never seen again. Whoa. Narvaez and his whole crew. The last man to see Narvaez alive and tell of it was Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who was one of only 4 men to miraculously survive the grueling expedition. After a harrowing 9-year journey that nearly killed him multiple times, Cabeza de Vaca published his amazing story in 1542. All right, something we're going to probably get into, read his whole account, what happened to him, according to him, right? And it quickly became a sizzling Spanish bestseller. Cabeza de Vaca's story had all the exciting elements found in page-turning classics, plus extra special ingredients such as battles in strange Florida jungles with giants. All right, he actually wrote Cabeza de Vaca, this conquistador, right, in the 1500s, what he experienced in Florida, right, in the jungles of Florida. Listen, he says, from a primary source, you can go verify it if you like, says, when we attempted to cross the large lake, we came under heavy attack from many giant Indians concealed behind trees. Some of our men were wounded in this conflict, for which the good armor they wore did not avail. The Indians we had so far seen are all archers. They go naked, are large of body, and appear at a distance like giants. They are of admirable proportions, very spare and of great activity and strength. The bows they use are as thick as the arm, of 11 or 12 palms in length, which they discharge at 200 paces with so great precision that they miss nothing. Wow, so it's not just these little bow and arrows, because they are giant, so they're making giant arrows. Even worse for somebody who's 5'4", right? These Spaniards. Can you guys imagine that? 10 years later, Hernando de Soto followed in Narvaez's footsteps by sailing 9 ships into Tampa Bay with the intent of conquering Florida once and for all right? Conquering and enslaving the Indians. That's what he did. As they ventured inland, they encountered various tribes, each with a giant that reigned as chief, all right? Each with a giant that reigned as chief. Not just one. Listen, these conquistadors kidnapped these chiefs and infuriated local tribes, which banded together to fight under the tomahawk of the giant chief Copafi of the Apalachee. The uprising sparked a war that lasted for weeks. De Soto eventually chased Copafi deep into what would be modern-day Tallahassee, before finally capturing and executing the giant rebel, all right? Copafi was a giant. Oh man, you see what he did to the chief of the Apalachee? And same thing, he encountered Tuscaloosa, and you already know what happened. We got a video on it, but he's probably going to talk about it here. It says Hernando de Soto's encounters with giants continued as he pushed further inland with more than 600 men and 200 horses. All right. So we got a whole book of Hernando's conquest of the southeast with 600 soldiers. That's like literally the title of the book. It's very old, and we have read parts of it. We're gonna definitely get back into that at some point. Try to read all the details and stories according to these conquistadors, right? Their version of what happened. It says Rodrigo Rangel, De Soto's private secretary, wrote about the mighty giant chief Tuscaloosa. All right, here we go. The Black Warrior. That's what Tuscaloosa means, Black Warrior. And the chief's giant offspring, who greeted the wary conquistadors as they marched into muggy Alabama. All right, so first they met Tuscaloosa's son, he was also very tall. He was almost like 7 or 8 foot, right? And they're saying that his dad was taller than him. All right, so it says, so Rangel wrote, this is the primary source, we reached a hamlet, which, though rightfully under his scepter, of with treacherous arms his lawful sway had stubbornly withstood, a giant monarch, Tuscaloosa, ruled the neighboring kingdom, and he sowed abroad among these subjects of his brother Prince disloyalty and discontent. Here came to meet us from the pathway to the west a warrior, naked as a god from heaven, scorning the fleshy drapery of the clouds. Only upon his brow were scarlet plumes, plucked from the ibis. You guys hear that? From the what? The ibis? Say what? You mean like Thoth? You mean like the Egyptian god Thoth, the ibis? What? Yeah, you didn't know ibis, especially the one Thoth is represented, is a green ibis, which is from Central and North America. All right, the ibis feathers on his brow, while his careless hands swayed a spear lightly. Seeing him, we paused, dumb with amazement, for though but a youth, still in his April dawns, he towered on high, a great limbed giant. All right, he was still growing. Basically, he was young. He's like a teenager. Heads of a tallest man reach only to his breast. You guys hear that? All right, we've gone over this. They wrote this. We're going over again. Remember, this is from another source. The Spaniards, right? Remember, they were like 5'4", 5'5". If anything, 5'6", 5'7". They weren't that tall, right? So it says their heads only reach his chest, and he was only a teenager. He was still growing. All right, again, I'm going to read it, guys. Pay attention. He was a great-limbed giant. Heads of tallest men reached only to his breast, only to his chest. All right, you see how tall he was? Taking up our march. After 3 days, we reached a little town where the chief tarried. Pitching first our tents, the monarch next we sought, and soon described encounters before his wigwam on a mound, and 100 of his peers surrounding him, a giant, mightier than his son, a giant, mightier than his son, taller, bigger. All right, his dad was way bigger. Remember, they only reached to their son's chest. So imagine, they're probably in Tuscaloosa's belly and belly button or private part, right? Like, this guy's a giant, a giant mightier than his son. All right, they wrote this, guys. He was that tall, matching the giant bones in the mounds. Tuscaloosa, which means black warrior. De Soto and 15 soldiers entered Tuscaloosa's village and were treated to a few days' worth of colorful war dances before convincing Tuscaloosa to peacefully join them on their quest toward Mobile. All right, so they say he convinced them peacefully, but in other writings, they say he was forced. He was forced. He had no choice. Somehow he made them go with him, right? So they went towards Mobile. It was even hard finding a horse for the giant chief to right upon as he was so large that his feet ended up dragging on the ground. While on the trail, two of De Soto's soldiers turned up missing, and the returning scouts returned to warn De Soto about the many natives that had gathered for rebellion. De Soto rode through a welcoming committee of painted warriors, dancing women, and flute-playing children, and entered the town with his fellow soldiers, Tuscaloosa, and the chief's entourage. The outnumbered conquistadors were now surrounded by more than 2,000 American Indians, warriors who were hiding behind the town's walls. Sensing the danger they were now in, De Soto demanded that his men be unharmed, as Tuscaloosa laughed in his face before disappearing into the hive of Indian warriors. He laughed at him. The arrows began raining down on De Soto and his men as they retreated from the village while Tuscaloosa escaped. After regrouping and revising their strategy, De Soto and his men gained entry into the village, killed Tuscaloosa's giant son. All right, see what they did? They killed Tuscaloosa's son. That's messed up. The giant son. They set fire to the place and massacred the city's inhabitants. That's what they did. These evil people. Tuscaloosa was soon captured by the conquistadors and hanged to death in full view of the town's smoldering inferno. Oh no, they hanged them, huh? Would they be hanging in the south, huh? Nothing be changing, right? But don't think that these conquistadors are only pale skin, okay? These are so-called black conquistadors too, all right? Shout out to Condrop, more and more war, as they say. Black on black crime, huh? The city of Tuscaloosa in Alabama is named after the giant chief. As De Soto and his men marched deeper west, they were finding fewer giant chiefs and more massive, mysterious mounds. Some of these mounds contained the remnants of the lost race of giants that once ruled the Americas. All right, this is what we've been reporting on. Anglo-American settlers who came to Florida in the mid-1800s were well versed in local urban legends, claiming that an ancient race of giants once inhabited the sun-soaked state. Some of these early settlers even claimed to have seen thousands of giant skulls floating on the surface of Lake Okeechobee. All right, thousands of giant skulls alone in Lake Okeechobee. When the drought hit in 2007, Lake Okeechobee's water level receded so low that it revealed a cemetery full of skeletons that were at least, listen, 7 feet in length. All right, we're going to definitely follow up on this one. Oh, for sure. Wow. So that's what's under, huh? This man-made lake, huh? Man-made lake, most likely. Some of their massive skulls even showed signs of intentional deformation, like the famous elongated skulls of Paracus, Peru. Just like the ones in Peru with the elongated skull, guys. Listen, mentioned earlier in the book, 7-footers with skulls like that. It makes sense because these elongated skulls in Peru, they do look like they are from a bigger, taller human, because they're a little larger than the human skulls, right? It's a strange coincidence that the giant chiefs of the Calusa Indians of South Florida were known as the Paracuste. All right, listen, which means the people of Paracus. Paracus is a relation there with Southeast Indians and many people from Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. We've gone over this. Ancient trade has been going on. People going mixing, creating clans and tribes, but they had an origin. They had a common ancestor or progenitor. A lot of different nations, okay, in the Americas. So this is very interesting here, how they're saying that the Calusa Indians of South Florida were known as the Paracuste, the chiefs or the giant chiefs of that tribe, which means the people of Paracus. This is an area in Peru, home to a vast desert and harsh arid conditions. It's also home to numerous graves of elongated skulls and the infamous Nazca lines. All right, that's what the Paracus people were. right where they got these Nazca lines, and they're finding these elongated skulls in Peru, all right? Things we are definitely gonna get back into more in depth, all this investigation. I know there's many videos on YouTube out there, many readings about this, all right? It says these Nazca lines, remember, which can only be seen from the sky. So it's like they had a way to supposedly fly. You could only see them from the sky. This is ancient people were flying. South Florida is a long hike from the highlands of Peru. Maybe they flew there. And I just said maybe they were flying. Like I just said, maybe they flew there. The following is a 1925 news article from Florida that may shed some light, all right? So, again, another news article. You know, we've been reading so many. These were real news reports of the and the time that these excavations were happening, or these finds were going on, these giant bones being found, dug up. It says here, a huge skeleton found in Florida. Discovery of a skull, 1/4 larger than that of the normal modern, together with bones, indicating a probable height of not less than 7 feet. Not less than 7 feet leads to speculation over theories of a giant race believed to have once inhabited Florida. The portions of the skeletons were found by workmen grading a road near Charlotte and Lee County lines. The bones are believed to be those of a male. The specimens are to be shipped to the Smithsonian Institution. Oh no. So now we know why we never learned about this. Guys, come on. How many times did these bones get shipped to the Smithsonian? We already know they're infamous, notorious for losing things or just saying, oh, nope, we never got this. It never existed. What you talking about? We don't know anything. What you talking about, Willis? Yeah, they're the gatekeepers. They hid all this. Given the measurement, it's safe to say the skeleton was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. To 8 feet tall. More 8-foot tall giants were discovered by fishermen in Miami, as reported on June 9th, 1936, issue of the New York Times. All right, now your New York Times reporting on a lot of these finds, not just, this is a very prestige newspaper, so a lot of people might believe this one over the other local newspapers that we read, but they're all telling you the same thing. Even the New York Times in 1936, June 9th, about Miami, it says a tale of human skeletons, 8 feet long, embedded in the sand of an uninhabited little island off the southern tip of the Florida mainland, was brought here today by 3 fishermen. All right, we're talking about the Key West. They exhibited a piece of one skull containing 6 teeth. E.M. Miller, zoologist at the University of Miami, said the mandible was that of a man and was probably 700 years old. Probably. Wow. Probably, though. Could be even older. It is entirely probable that this find might be important, he commented. But I could not tell anything about it unless I had the measurements or additional information. The man said the skulls were unusually thick. The jaw protruded, and the eye sockets were high in the head. All right. The first state geologist of Florida, E.H. Sellards, believed that the area's original inhabitants were a race of giants that dwelled in the southeast more than 125,000 years ago. All right. Why was he saying that? Why was he saying that, guys? The area's original inhabitants were a race of giants that dwelled in the southeast more than 125,000 years ago. All right. We're talking about real modern type humans, though. We ain't talking about ape men. We're just talking about a giant modern type humans, more bigger. He oversaw an excavation in Vero Beach. We just did the video about the Vero Beach skeleton that unearthed a giant skeleton more than 12 feet in height, but we didn't know he was 12 feet. All right, listen, Vero Beach, a 12-footer, is ancient man, right? The geology where they found the strata, the geologists tell you, is really, really old. But he was a 12-footer. He was a real giant 12-footer. It says here, reported in 1917, that human beings inhabited the North American continent more than has been conclusively proven through a recent discovery in this state by E.H. Sellers, state geologist, and Professor Oliver P. Hay, who have made a study of the fossil. Though their opinions are not fully concurred in by other scientists, they are positive that their researches have been thorough and there is no room for a mistake. The discovery was made several months ago, and though nothing of a definite nature had been given out until recently, it is now officially stated that human bones intermingled with those of the mastodon, saber-toothed tiger, and many other extinct animals that formerly ranged this hemisphere have been found, okay? And guys, we just did the video. The deposit was found near Vero Beach, Florida, right? That the human beings were of enormous size is evidenced by the bones. It is thought that some were 10 or 12 feet in height. All right. We just did the video. I think we did mention they were giants. Not sure if we mentioned specifically 12. I don't think they said that. But now you see at least 10 or 12 foot. What they found here, an ancient man in Florida, Vero Beach. Go check out the video. Some excellent specimens of the skeleton of these gigantic men have been found, some of them locked in the deadly embrace of great animals, with strange weapons of bone clutched in skeleton hands a foot long. Sellers and Hay were soon in the academic crosshairs as their discoveries threatened the evolutionary model timeline. It doesn't fit with Darwinism. It doesn't fit with their out of Africa theories. It doesn't fit with none of their, theories on human beings and their origins. All right, so they couldn't accept this. It threatened their theory of evolutionary, their Darwinism, their hijacks, their lies. Unsurprisingly, they were forced out of their positions and relocated far away from Florida. Wow. You see what happened to these guys who were investigating this? They didn't get funded anymore and they got sent away. We're going to get into that more in depth, okay? Their research. Their discovery of giant human remains in the Pleistocene period, Pleistocene man in America, in North America, Pleistocene period in North America, flies in the face of established history, which claims that giants never existed in the first place, let alone non-primate like humans. Do you see that? Living alongside extinct ancient animals. So they're saying, nah, but at that time, everybody was ape, man. There couldn't be modern humans in America. We just did the video the other day, right? Modern type human versus ape man. While they're finding over here, right, in Huejatlalco, Mexico, archaeological site, right? While they find in modern type human evidence of humans amongst fossils, drawing elephants and everything on bones, showing advanced humans, culture. We're talking about 200,000 years ago, according to the geology, right? I'm not saying that might be true, but it's old. Older than what your concept of old is, older than that, basically. Right? And then they found what? Lucy or Australopithecus over there, and they hijacked the history. And look what it says here. They couldn't accept that there was people over here because they wanted people to believe that everybody in that age was ape man. They couldn't be real humans. We were still apes. We hadn't evolved. He said, which claims that giants never existed in the first place, let alone non-primates like humans, living alongside extinct ancient animals. Proof of this was discovered in the Vero Beach excavation site more than 90 years later by an amateur fossil hunter who discovered a carved mastodon bone, all right? A carved just like Huejatlalco. Just like Huejatlalco. That means it was a human there. After 3 years of studying the fossil, science has claimed it to be the oldest, most spectacular and rare work of art in the Americas, right? Maybe, or the Huejatlalco might be the oldest one. They might be even older ones. We don't know, because they give these carbon dating to a lot of artifacts. But either way, what they're trying to tell us here, guys, is that they're finding people drawing, carving animals and everything on bones and deposits, right? They're finding this stuff where humans are not supposed to exist. In Africa, they're ape men at that time. You understand what the hijack? You guys understand the hijack? But then if we're talking about the oldest art in the Americas, then we're talking about the oldest art in the world. They ain't supposed to be humans anywhere else, so there wouldn't be anybody older than this drawing anything anywhere in the world. So this would be the oldest art in the world. We're talking about the true old world. However, there was no mention of the ancient giant skeletons discovered in the same earth strata, which were conveniently lost shortly after arriving at the Smithsonian in 1945. I told you. See, that's what the thing, when we did our video, Vero Beach, they say they, yeah, of gigantic or, larger size bones, but they didn't specify. 12 footers, wow. So the Smithsonian gatekeepers lost the bones. I told you they lose everything. Conveniently lose everything. Conveniently. This was the first time carved mastodon bones have caused a sensation. In the 1960s, all right, here we go. This is what we were just talking about in Mexico. It says amateur archaeologists, and this is in the 1960s, Juan Camacho discovered an engraved mastodon bone near the Valsequillo reservoir in the Mexico City area. Again, and we just talked about this the other day. You see how everything connects, right? That's why I like to go over certain things together, because I know we got books that are mentioning it again. And here we are. It's all full circle, right? A team from Harvard. So this is what happened in Valsequillo Reservoir, right? This is the Huella site. We just did a video on this the other day. I said, again, a team from Harvard, Peabody Museum, right? Harvard showed up and began excavating the site, eventually finding some of the oldest spearheads in the world. Again, the oldest spearheads in the world. Oldest spearheads in the world. Again, America's the true old world. They've been teaching everything in reverse. How many oldest things are we going to keep finding here? And more carved bones, right? And what more carved bones? The team put forth peer-reviewed studies postulating the age of the artifacts at more than 40,000 years. All right, even that is like them pushing there, because it's supposed to only be like 11, 12,000 years old, humans here from the Bering Strait, right? That's the whole hijack they taught us growing up. So ain't supposed to be nobody here 40,000 years ago. So even that was controversial. But that was one geologist, and because she was part of the whole mainstream, she didn't want to lose funding. She couldn't go any farther than that. Let's continue reading. So again, some of these artifacts, they were saying were more than 40,000 years, which was 3 times older than the official 12,000-year-old date for the first Americans, right? That's the hijack with their Clovis and Bering Strait theory. An exciting discovery for everyone involved. But when the United States Geology Survey, listen to this, geologists examined the artifacts and the site, they had much more mind-blowing age, dating the site and the artifacts at more than 200,000 years old, all right? 200,000 years old. We just did the video, right? This would radically alter everything we've ever been taught. Again, I gotta get that too. You gotta get that too. This would change everything we've been taught, guys. You gotta understand how important this is. That's why we're doing these videos. When we say America's the true old world, we're not just, I know I'm being a little biased because I'm from the Americas, but I'm just proud of this, knowing this and knowledge, especially because I'm from here. All right. This would radically alter everything we've ever been taught. Since according to mainstream academia, humans weren't around that long ago in general. All right. Nowhere in the world. So they're finding people in that old, 250,000 years old, according to the geology, who are also drawing and carving art on bones, some of the oldest art. Never mind killing mastodons, listen, and carving art on their bones. The establishment deemed that dating was impossible, despite the science proving otherwise, even though they used their own ways, right? Their own scientific ways to determine this stuff. This is what geologists do. So this is what I'm trying to explain to you. Pay attention what I'm about to say. So when they find something in Europe, when they find something in Africa, when they find something in Asia, and they say, oh, we found it in this deposit, and it's 80,000, 70,000, 100,000 year old, Neanderthal man. It's okay when they find it in those places, right? It's okay because it fits more of their Darwinism and their whole false history, their false narratives of that side being the old world and all that. But when you find this stuff here in the Americas, it's impossible. It's impossible. Even though their own science that they use in Europe, Asia, Africa is the same one they're using here. It's giving them those results. It's telling them, yo, 250,000 years old. They still don't want to confirm it, even their own science proving otherwise, and promptly dismissed and ignored the matter altogether. The discovery site in question soon became off limits and has been ever since, preventing any further excavations or investigations into this fascinating part of our ancient history. It became off limits. Remember, I showed you, they stopped. They said you can't, they blocked people from going there. They blocked people from going there. I showed you guys the sign in the video. So if they suppressed that part of history, why stop there? More giant skeletons were discovered on a tiny island off the shores of Tampa Bay, and a zone once traversed by ravishing conquistadors, the pirates, huh? The following extract is from the Lawrence Journal World on August 5th, 1927. What is the journal telling us here, huh? It says, giant Indians who roamed Florida swamps 500 years or more, living on shelled foods, which they cracked with their teeth, is a picture unfolded by archaeologists who have delved into a burial ground on a Gulf island near here. The skeletons were discovered on a small section of land where a lone fisherman has lived for years. Scientists estimated that the bones are at least 500 years old and are remains of a tribe known as Caribs, natives of the West Indies. They are believed to have inhabited the state and adjacent islands before the Spaniards in Florida. Now listen to how they're going to describe these ancient Caribs, right? It says the skulls, larger than those of current history, battered and crushed, indicated tribal battles. So these are like taller Caribs, right? The jaw and teeth are unusually large. Likewise are the body bones, indicating the Indians of past ages were veritable giants in comparison with those today. Mounds similar to the one in which the bones were unearthed are common in this state. The bones have been sent to the Smithsonian Institute for further examination. You see, all these people naively were, I guess that was the routine. They were in charge. The government made sure that the Smithsonian collected all this evidence. They held from us. They didn't want us to know there was all these giants, people here. Like I'm talking about people 7, 8, 9, 10 footers all over the Americas. They hid this. They were the gatekeepers. This is why we never really found out about any of this. These taller, giant Caribs, huh? They're saying they're Caribs. It might be something else. Either way, they probably are Caribs. Says once again, the bones were sent to the Smithsonian and never seen again. Once again. Okay. In 1911, Florida canal builders discovered an unknown race of 7-foot giants when they attempted to destroy a mound that was in their way. You see, destroying mounds. History, right? It was a cool winter's eve when workers in Boynton Beach demolished a 15-foot-high mound that was covered in greenish plant shrubs and mahogany vines. The following extract details some of that process. It says Boynton, Florida, December 6. There was much surprise and excitement when the workmen began removing the soil of the mound to find it was an ancient burial place of some unknown people, the history of which has not been learned. About one half of the mound has been removed in the grading of the roadway, and in that were skeletons of about 50 people. All right, all placed with care and precision, with heads toward the apex of the mound. The bodies were placed in layers with an amount of sand between the ocean sand had been carried, and ocean sand had been carried in to cover them. Amber beads, broken crockery, and scissors, rusted apart, were among the articles found buried there. They had scissors. Listen, ancient people, they had scissors, right? One skeleton, which was found intact, measured 7 feet from crown to toe. The bodies had been buried such a length of time that many of the bones crumbled when exposed to the air and moved about. All right, that's what they reported. Okay. Continuing, it says here that Tocobaga Indians that inhabited the Tampa region were also referred to as giants by the European settlers of Florida. And they got the sources, right? Number 10. In 1932, another 8-foot giant was discovered of Cape Sable near Homestead and was given to the University of Miami, which promptly lost the remains. An undisturbed 2,500-year-old graveyard of giant bones was discovered by divers at the bottom of Silver Springs near Ocala, Florida. Wow. While mounds in St. Petersburg unearthed an ancient race of giants, listen, more than 9 feet tall. 9-footers, all right? Real giants here. It's safe to say that if the conquistadors attempted to excavate these mounds, their minds would have been blown to smithereens. Yeah, but just like De Soto, right? He didn't have to. He encountered one. Tuscaloosa, right? And many others. Remember, we just read. Yeah, they would have went like, wow. Even right now, when we're finding them, been blown to smithereens. So the neighboring state of Georgia also had its fair share of anomalous giant history as well. But is the nation of Georgia once part of Soviet Russia? Listen, what? That is sending shockwaves to the establishment with recent bone discoveries that threaten to overturn the theory of evolution once and for all. As archaeologists have unearthed 6 ancient skeletons dating back 1.8 million years. And these incredibly well-preserved Georgian bones are the earliest humans ever found outside Africa. All right, so I bet you these are like ape-type humans, right? Ape men. Coincidentally, bones of a giant man were discovered in a cave in the nearby Georgian city of Borjomi. And Russian news reports about the discovery estimated the man to be around 9 to 10 feet tall, while the skull was more than 3 times the size of an average human skull. Unsurprisingly, these giant bones have gone missing. Recent DNA and archaeological tests have also proven that a great cataclysm known as the Younger Dryas event was caused by a comet strike that happened at the end of the last ice age more than 12,000 years ago, right? So touch the hijack with the space talk. Are we talking about a dragon when you mean comet? Is that what you mean? A dragon? What are we really talking about here? All right, that's the hijack with the whole mass extinction. Yeah, something happened, but was it really from space? Scientists studying the DNA of ancient Europeans found evidence of an unexplained population shift when local hunter-gatherers were nearly replaced by an unknown group from another area. Researchers from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Germany made the intriguing discovery. After studying the 40,000-year-old mitochondrial genomes of 35 European hunter-gatherers, the Institute's Johannes Krauss reported, "We uncovered a completely unknown chapter of human history, a major population turnover at the end of the last ice age." Adam Powell, another Max Planck Institute scientist, adds, "Our models suggest that during this period of climatic upheaval, The descendants of the hunter-gatherers who survived through the last glacial maximum or ice age were largely replaced by a population from another source. Could this source be the mysterious red-headed giants that once flourished during the Bronze Age? 5 of their giant Bronze Age axes, twice the size of those normally discovered, were found in a field in Jutland, Denmark in 2015. This discovery by Danish farmers adds to the total number of Bronze Age axes discovered in Northern Europe to 10, although the previous 5 were only about half the size of the giant Danish axes. Back in the 16th century America, the conquistador Pedro de Salazar was near the coast of Georgia, looking to enslave American Indians. Who? American Indians, not Africans. Where's he looking? In America. He's not in West Africa looking to enslave people. He's in America looking to enslave American Indians. When he discovered a tribe of peaceful giants. These American Indians resided on one of the various islands that litter the coastline between Georgia and Cape Fear, North Carolina. All right, this is what they're talking about. Salazar and his men wined and dined with the natives in a place named Island of Giants by Spanish historians. After a few days of rest and reconnaissance, Salazar decided it was time to pack up and take the giants back with him. They resisted but were forced on the voyage back to Hispaniola. All right, listen, he took them. He did enslave them. These peaceful giants, peaceful people, calling them giants, peaceful people. They're just very tall people, Indians. He grabbed from North Carolina, okay? Indians, not Africans. He took them, he enslaved them, took them to Hispaniola, right? So when they're saying they're replacing the local population with Africans, that's a lie. I've been trying to tell you for years. Have you done the numbers yet? How many different Indians and Europeans are being brought to Hispaniola? Where's the Africans? Continues, says more than half of the giants died on the quest back to the island, and the remaining giants died shortly after being forced into slavery in Puerto Plata. Wow. So some of these giants were enslaved, huh? How many were really enslaved, huh? Think about that. How many of these American Indians were actual giants that were enslaved? Dwindling down the populations, right? And then they start mixing their shortness into the Indians. Just a theory, just a thought. These giants of Georgia were taller than the local Arawak Lucayans, all right, who were already considered huge to the tiny conquistadors. So imagine, to the Spanish, the Arawak and Lucayans were tall, but these other people from Georgia, North Carolina were even taller, who were already considered huge, right? It was later discovered that these giant Georgian Indians had established trade routes and made many voyages to the Caribbean, specifically the Bahamas. They were already navigating before the Spanish got there. It wasn't their first time traveling, or going to the Caribbean. When other conquistadors returned to find Salazar's island of giants, they didn't find any more tribes and abandoned coastal searches of Georgia for inland treks. Wow. What happened to all the people, all the Indians in these islands of the coast of Georgia? What happened? Enslaved. Not Africans. An important giant discovery was made in Cartersville, Georgia, in 1886, when a team from the Smithsonian was excavating the Tumlin Mounds, or Tumlin. Inside one of the mounds, they found a vault inscribed with strange, undecipherable hieroglyphics, which housed the skeletal remains of a 7-foot tall giant, all right, mound with inscriptions, hieroglyphics, all right. They said we didn't have writing, and then a 7-footer, right, in one place. Several years ago, an Indian mound was opened near Cartersville, Georgia, by a committee of scientists from Smithsonian. After removing the dirt for some distance, a layer of large flagstones was found. which had evidently been dressed by hand. All right, we're talking about tablets here, ancient tablets with inscriptions, okay, showing that the man who quarried the rock understood the business. Real stone masons. These stones were removed, and in a vault beneath them was found the skeletons of a giant measuring 7 feet and 2 inches. His hair was coarse and jet black, all right, not red hair, okay? This is what I was saying earlier. You see, not all these giants had red hair. People, a lot of you guys like to generalize. A lot of you guys like to generalize, like, not everybody had red hair, okay? Again, coarse, jet black, coarse. What you mean coarse? Like woolly, a little bit woolly, coarse, and hung to the waist. And they hung to the waist. About dreadlocks? What you talking about? The bro being ornamented with a copper crown, all right? We finding a king, a copper crown from Michigan, right? A copper, and a giant, right? 7 feet 2 inches, with coarse jet black hair that went down to his waist. The skeleton was remarkably well preserved and was taken from the vault intact. Nearby were found the bodies of several children of various sizes. The remains of the latter were covered with beads made of bone of some kind. Upon removing these, the bodies were found to be enclosed in a network of straw or reeds, and underneath these was a covering of the skin of some animal. In fact, the bodies had been prepared somewhat after the manner of mummies. They were mummies. They were mummified guys, and will doubtless throw new light upon the history of the people who reared these mounds. Right, we're talking about the real ancient Egypt, too. On the stones which covered the vault were carved inscriptions. All right, these are tablets, and if deciphered, will probably lift the veil, which has enshrouded the history of the race of giants, which undoubtedly at one time inhabited the continent. All right, so remember, this was done by the Smithsonian excavating, so of course we never got a hold of the tablets or the bones. They just buried this info, buried this excavation. Don't let nobody know what we found here, okay? He had coarse jet black hair, coarse. All the evidence from this important discovery was shipped back to the Smithsonian and promptly lost. Here we go again. The gatekeepers. These tumbling mounds are known today as the Etowah Mounds, all right? That's what he was talking about the whole time. And associated with the local Etowah Indians, who before their extinction starts to hijack. You still here? You mean their enslavement and reclassification and murder? Claimed that they had nothing to do with the building of the mounds. It's pretty clear that we can associate the mounds with that race of giants that once inhabited America. Mound excavations in the 1880s at the Etowah complex produced a stunning giant, listen, a stunning giant more than 14 feet tall. 14 feet tall, that's big. That's a giant. That's a real giant, even to a 7 or 8 footer. Imagine a 7 or 8 footer seeing a 14 footer. He's going to say, well, that's a real giant. I'm just taller than you, which unfortunately has also gone missing. Wow. This insane discovery was reported by the New York Times, listen, in 1886, okay? In 1886, we're going to find the originals one day and do a video on the originals. Yes, you guys can see it, okay? It says, reported in the New York Times in 1886, all right? Monster skull and bones. Cartersville, Georgia, April 4th. The water has receded from the tumbling mound field. It has left uncovered acres of skulls and bones. Some of these are gigantic. If the whole frame is in proportion to 2 thigh bones that were found, their owner must have stood 14 feet, all right? 14 feet high. 14, that's the New York Times telling people this. In 1886, many curious ornaments of shell, brass, and stone have been found. Some of the bodies were buried in small vaults built of stones. The whole makes a mine of archaeological wealth. A representative of the Smithsonian Institution is here investigating the curious relics, all right? The Smithsonian hid this. They got reported by New York Times. They snitched. Who's investigating this, exploring this? The Smithsonian. Uh-oh. A 14-foot giant in Georgia in the Etowah Mounds, guys. Did you know that? In the Etowah Mounds. The mounds of Georgia unearthed more giant skeletons along with other various artifacts and shell art unassociated with local Georgian tribes like the Cherokees. In fact, when questioned about the mounds, the Cherokees possess no information whatsoever about the race that built them. All right, so again, Georgia's really not a Cherokee state, okay? That was more like the Muskogee Nation, so-called Creeks and all that, right? And other tribes, right? And other tribes. Cherokee more Tennessee and western mountainous North Carolina, really. Like, that's about it. That was kind of their main locations. But of course, they moved out of there, mixed with other nations, moved and set up shop any other place, just like people today travel. So of course, if you say, well, my family was Cherokee and he was in Virginia, well, maybe he moved there, but they were originally, their stronghold was somewhere else. Okay. One of the most ancient archaeological sites in North America, in the mound complex built on the Mississippi River Bayou at Poverty Point, Louisiana. Okay, in Poverty Point. The complex, which has been dated back to 1500 BC, all right, we got videos on Poverty Point, a couple of them, hosts 6 enormous mounds that were aligned to predict the vernal and autumnal equinoxes. Although a visit to these mounds today will not mention anything in relation to giants, 19th century news articles tell a different story. More than 700 mounds once dotted the landscape of Louisiana. All right, you guys hear that? More than 700 mounds once dotted, possibly even more, alone in Louisiana. And most of them unearthed ancient giant bones. Listen, most of them had what? Just like any other mound in North America. All these giant bones being found, guys, everywhere. Do you guys see how many? You guys see all the videos I got? Check out the whole playlist of my Giants video series I got going, this investigation, all these reports, all these writings that was already done, and nobody really had a clue, because this was all really like, how do you say, downplayed. Oh, that's not real. Oh, don't worry about that. They got lost. But in Louisiana, all these mounds contain giant bones like those reportedly discovered in Winsboro, Louisiana in 1882. So skeletons of a race of giants who averaged 12 feet in height. All right, in Louisiana, 12-footers, 12-foot giants in Louisiana, guys, were found today by workmen engaged upon a drainage project at Crowville, near here. There were several score, at least, of the skeletons, and they lie in various positions. It is believed they were killed in a prehistoric fight. A prehistoric fight. We're talking about very old, prehistory. And that the bodies lay where they fell until covered with alluvial deposits due to the flooding of the Mississippi River. Wow. No weapons of any sort were found, and it is believed that Titans, who's the Titans? Who's your Greek mythological Titans? Americans. We told you, we read the book Researches into the Lost History of Americas, right? Breaking down the mythology, it all comes back. It connects to ancient America, all this mythology of the so-called old world. The Titans must have struggled with wooden clubs. The skulls are a perfect state of preservation, and one of the jawbones is large enough to fit around a child's body. The southeastern state of Tennessee was also host to mysterious mounds and ancient giants. In 1874, a mound south of Elvis, Memphis stomping grounds found a giant skeleton buried with colorfully painted terracotta vases. Although some giant discoveries in Tennessee turned out to be mastodon bones of other ancient animals such as sloths, a good portion of the discoveries were those of an unknown lost race of giants that had been mostly forgotten. Besides, mastodons never buried themselves with human artifacts such as masks, pots, and wampum bed art. Tennessee's Old Stone Fort in Manchester is another mysterious ancient monument, once again falsely attributed to the local natives. The Old Stone Fort, listen, looks more like an old stone wall that might have been constructed by traveling Welshmen or Phoenicians. This is the true old world, no, it was by local people here. Or it might even be old enough to be associated with giants. The March 30th, 1872 issue of the Hartford Weekly Times details this finding. Guys, this was all reported, right? That's what I'm saying. We ain't making this up. Race of giants found in underground tomb under Old Stone Fort in Tennessee. Near this city is a cave commonly known as Bone Cave, from which have been brought at various times by boys and other persons who have tried to explore its hidden recesses, human bones of unusual size. The popular legends of the people are to be the effect that it is somewhat connected with the people or race which created the Old Stone Fort, which stands a short distance to the west of the town. A few days since, some boys discovered an almost entire skeleton of mammoth size. The bones of the forearm were nearly 20 inches long, while the bone of the lower part of the leg was longer than an ordinary man's limb, foot and all. The jawbone of this giant would slip over the face of an ordinary man. This passage of the cave looks as if it had been cut from the solid rock by the hand of man, and gives rise to the hypothesis that at some time, far back in the Dark Ages, this cave was used by a race of men, giants if you like, that built this stone fort in the mounds, and that this underground passage led from the fort to the cave a mile distant. Alright, wow, we got more reports here. It says giant skeletons were also found in a mound at the nearby town at Ripley, Tennessee, reported by the Lanceport Reporter on July 3rd, 1903. Indian Mound near Tennessee town yields remains of gigantic men. Alright, this is the other report. Ripley, Tennessee, April 23rd. Skeletons of 3 gigantic men buried by a forgotten race have been unearthed by a fisherman digging in an old Indian mound near here. Tribal finery in which they were interred was recovered intact. One of the skeletons bore ivory beads and a long ivory ornament. The other was decorated with copper beads and designs of bone and mica. 2 were found near the surface. Further down, the largest of the skeletons was discovered in a sitting position on a carpet of ashes. Pottery, one piece containing the bones of an infant, was found nearby. It was in a fine state of preservation. Indian mounds abound in this section, but hitherto none had yielded skeletons the size of those found by the fisherman. He has offered them to the Tennessee Historical Society at Nashville. Alright, that's the report. More giants, more mounds with giants all over the place. About an hour and a half away, near the town of Franklin, more giant bones were unearthed by a resident farm owner searching for water springs on his property. From the Tennessee Western Weekly, alright, they also reported this on November 11th, 1845. Says here, they have been recently dug up in Williamson County, Tennessee, 7 miles from Franklin, the bones of a giant, and no mistake. We have conversed with an intelligent, enterprising gentleman of our city, who had seen, examined, and purchased an interest in the skeleton. From him we derived the following facts. A Mr. Shoemate was born for water near his residence, upon a hill of considerable extent and eminence, situated in a rocky, mountainous section country, where the bones were discovered about 60 feet beneath the surface. Alright, 60 feet beneath. That's gotta be old. They were immediately exhumed and were found embedded in a strata of the hardest kind of clay, which had apparently filled an extensive cavern or opening in the rock. No doubt rests in the minds of any who have seen or examined them that these bones belong to the genus Homo, All the larger and characteristic bones are entire, and the skull, arms, and thigh bones, knee, pants, shoulder sockets, and collar bones removed all skepticism as to their humanity. He's saying these are modern type humans, not ape men. The whole skeleton, we are informed, is about 18 feet high. Wow. It must have stood full 19 feet in his stockings if he wore any. 18 or 19-foot giant, guys. Come on now. A 19-foot giant in Tennessee. Now we're talking about real giants here. We're talking about that these are giants even to a 9-footer. This is a giant even to a 12-footer. Talking about real giants. We're talking about people, modern type human bodies, right? Like us, but just larger. In America, different sizes, different ranges. We're talking about from 7 feet now to about 19 feet, 20 feet tall, right? From 7-footers to 20-footers. You guys know all the giant videos and reports we read. You guys see how many? You guys see, wow, this is incredible. 18 feet high. This was reported in the Tennessee Western Weekly. Look it up. 1845. They didn't tell us this. They found an 18 to 19-foot person skeleton. Okay? Amazing. They hid all this from us. The true old world here. And they were giants in those days, just like the Bible said. So I'm showing you guys this. This is the true biblical lands. This is the oldest land out of the primordial waters. These bones were later assembled to create a traveling exhibit, which was first showcased in a downtown Nashville movie theater and then moved to a museum in New Orleans for public display. Newspapers across the country were hailing the discovery as proof of an ancient giant race, possibly from Atlantis. This is Atlantis, you're right. The excitement soon turned to ridicule. However, when a scientist from the Louisiana Medical College debunked the Williamson County giant as nothing more than mastodon bones. Despite this debunking, additional giant bones and Indian giants were waiting to be discovered in the Southwest as more conquistadors like Coronado made the trek in search of everlasting glory and fabled lost cities of gold. Right. And that's the end of this chapter, guys. We're going to go ahead and end it here for today. We'll be back in this book for chapter 3 for sure. I hope you guys really enjoyed this reading. This had a lot of good drop to follow up on and a lot of good additional information in case we haven't already read these specific reports in these specific places of the United States before. So hopefully we added to the investigation. As you guys see, there's just so much drop when it comes to giants in North America or just in general in the Americas itself. All right, I appreciate you guys for taking the time to come view the video, taking the time to stick around all the way to the end of me reading the whole chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. That was a good reading. And again, this is a good addition to our investigation of the ancient giants, or as it says here in the book, discovering ancient America, ancient America's lost giants by Xavier Hayes. Shout out to Xavier Hayes. Get the book if you like it. I have it here shared in my Patreon page already. If you're interested, to all my patrons, you have access to this book if you'd like to go ahead and check it out. All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. You know, I don't know what to say other than, I mean, this is amazing, guys. I hope you see giants, like tall people, taller people of different sizes were here, were real. These were real. This is real. Open your mind. This is real. It's not mythology. It's not just stories. It's not just biblical stories. Biblical stories is history, a lot of them. All right? And there were giants in those days. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawaii.